Thanks again for joining us for today's webcast, Why Use SmartList Builder. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Nicole Albertson. Nicole, you have the floor.
Thank you, Adam. Well, my name is Nicole Albertson. I'm with E1 Integrated Business Solutions, and I'm happy to be with you today to take a look at and help you understand what the difference is between the SmartList that everyone has and SmartList Builder and how that adds on to it. So let's just take a little look at what the true difference is on a pretty high level. First, we have SmartList, which is a great tool for doing some basic queries using the default built-in views that come with it. They can pull data from a lot of different places by default with GP, and then you can take that data and get into Excel, as you probably know. It's there with every GP install, so you don't have to worry about purchasing it or anything like that, so everybody has it. And so what SmartList Builder does is just expand on SmartList and the functionality you already have. SmartList Builder allows us to create completely new SmartLists that you don't have, or we can create ones that mimic the default ones you get in SmartList and just add information. You might be looking for a specific field that's not on the default and you can't add it. We can add those fields with SmartList Builder. SmartList Builder also has options to add additional restrictions, as well as do calculated fields that create a new column on your report. Another great feature that kind of sets SmartList Builder apart is that we can pull from any GP table or any SQL table that's on the same SQL server as your GP databases. So we aren't limited to just GP data. If you have CRM or another application that you want to pull data and link it to your GP tables, or even not link it, you just want to make a CRM report inside GP, we could do that with SmartList Builder. SmartList Builder is an additional purchase, so if you're looking at that, you'd want to work with your partner to get a quote on it. But when you buy SmartList Builder, it actually comes with 4 different Builder products in it. There's SmartList Builder, which builds new SmartLists. Excel Report Builder allows you to build new refreshable Excel reports. Navigation List Builder allows you to build new navigation lists. And then Drill Down Builder allows you to drill back from, say, an Excel report, an SRS report, something like that, back into the GP application and open the different GP windows. So I'm not going to walk you through every step of SmartList Builder, so it's not going to be more of a training. I just want to show you what it can do and get you thinking about how it might be able to help you in your office and in what you need to get out of GP for data. So let's switch over to GP, and what I'm going to do today is use the new Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013 for this demo. So if something looks a little bit different than what you're familiar with, just so you know I am in 2013. But to get the SmartList Builder once you have it installed, the navigation is pretty easy. It's just the Microsoft Dynamics GP Tools SmartList Builder. And here you can see the 4 products that I talked about of the builders. We're just going to use SmartList Builder for a while, and I'll go into a couple of the others a little later on here. So this is basically SmartList Builder. The nice thing about it is once you learn SmartList Builder, you basically know Excel Report Builder and Navigation List Builder, as the look and feel is very similar. Of course, there's some minor differences just because they're linking into different things. Some things we have to do for Excel that we wouldn't do for SmartList and things like that. So to get us started, it can be kind of a daunting thing because, yeah, I can give it a name, but then once I want to pull some tables, how do I know what tables to pull? It's going to be based on the data you need to retrieve, but a great way to get you started is to download the templates that are on Customer Source for you. So in the slide deck, there is a link to the templates, but they're basically free templates from Customer Source that mirror the default SmartList. So if you use a sales transaction one in SmartList and you say, I want some more fields on that, go get the default, the download, and then we can add another table or whatever we need to do to get those additional fields you need. So they're kind of a great tool to get you started on developing your own or even just to look at and try and learn. As you're using those, I do recommend you duplicate them once you get them in a system, just so that if you need to import it again, because maybe you want two different ones that kind of mimic the sales transactions, duplicate it, because if I import it again, it would override the one that's there. So just kind of a hint there to make sure you're doing that. So we'll go back to SmartList Builder. And actually, I'm going to show you the SmartList Templates download page. So on Customer Source, as I said, it's just under the Reports library, but the URL is in the slide deck. You can see we've just created all of the different SmartLists into a SmartList Builder import. And they're very simple to import. You come into the GP and then Tools, SmartList Builder, and there's actually an import option. You browse to the file, select the actual file you want. If I do vendors, there it is, okay. Well, and then you click import, and it takes a couple of minutes sometimes for some of these, depending on how big they are, how many tables are in them. But it is a pretty quick process versus setting them up yourself. So I won't import that, just so you don't have to watch it process. But if I come back to SmartList Builder here, you can see I have some actually set up in here already. I've imported a couple of them for us today. So when you just pull one of these up, I'll just pull up the sales transactions, you can see it actually has all of the tables that I would need to make the default SmartList sales transactions. Now, one of the questions we get a lot is, can I just open the default ones in here? Why do I have to get these templates from Customer Source? You really can't pull the default ones in here, and that's why the templates were built, so that you didn't have to rework all of them. They're just built in two different forms, so they don't link together quite right to do that. So, but the templates are there, so we want to make sure you use those and not start from scratch on all of that. And so let's just take a couple of examples today here and show you some of the features we have. The first thing I want to show you is using negative. So one of the big things we hear, if you go into SmartList and look at, say, the sales transactions, the return, and I'm using FabricCam data, so there's not a lot here, but just enough. If I look at a return, the document amount is a positive. Well, if I were to export this to Excel and try and do a total on that, it's not going to be right, because truly a return should be a negative when you're adding it to your sales. So that's kind of one of the complaints we hear in SmartList, and there's really no way to change that to make it a negative. You would have to do that in Excel after the fact. But with SmartList Builder, if I take the sales transaction template, all I have to do is find that document amount. So I'm going to sort this by the ones that I have set to default, which means they're going to be in my SmartList by default. The rest of these display ones are just, if I go to the columns button in SmartList, I can add them to it. So here's my document amount. I just highlight the name, and I click the field options arrow here. All I have to do is go to negative values, and I can say display a negative based on the field type. So I'm going to select the sales transaction work because I want the stop type of return. And then I'll pick my stop type. And now I see the different stop types, and I can say, when it's a return, display it as a negative. I save this, and now I have to launch SmartList. And when I do so, it actually is going to give me a message like this saying that it has some changes. Do I want to apply them? If I say no, my change of making that a negative won't be in SmartList. If I say yes, they'll put it into SmartList here. So it's just moving it from the SmartList Builder tables to the actual SmartList tables as we do this. And because of the way I had that set up in SmartList, it's actually, or in SmartList Builder, it's actually going to go into this additional SmartList. There is an option to put them underneath sales and that type of thing, but I have them called the same name. So if I put them both under sales, I wouldn't know which one was the SmartList Builder one and which one's the default one. I just click on the sales transactions. And now if I go to a return, it's actually displaying as a negative, just because I checked that one box. So it's kind of a nice little feature. We get a lot of comments on that you can't do that in SmartList, so we like that in SmartList Builder. Now another nice thing about SmartList Builder is the restriction options. As many of you know, in SmartList you have a limit of 4 search filters. So I come in here, there's 4 search criteria. Well, that can be kind of limiting. Say I wanted to do something where I have 4 states that I want to pull data from because it's a regional report or something like that. But then I also might want to be able to filter on a salesperson or a customer ID or something. I don't have enough fields to do all of that here. So what you can do with SmartList Builder, if I pull up, we'll use the receivables transaction for this one. You can see it's a little bit different tables. This is another template out there so that you don't have to worry about setting it up. All I have to do is go to restrictions, and then I add one. It says what table is the field you want to restrict on. Well, I'm going to restrict on the state first. So that's on my customer. So I'm going to go to customer master. And then I'll just go down to state. And then you can see I have a lot of different options here. Some of the basics that I would have in SmartList as well. But one of the nice ones is equal to one of list. So I can make a list, and then it says it's equal to one of those. So that's what I'm going to do for my state. Now all I have to do is add values. So we'll just do, this is FiberCam data, so I'm going to make sure I get some states that are there. Minnesota. 4 of them here. I'll do those 4 states. So that would have taken up all the search criteria in SmartList for me. So I can save this. So I have that. Now if I want to, I can add another one. We'll say for the customer number between A and F. So I can keep doing that. There is no limit here to the number of restrictions. The other nice thing is that say I want this to apply to one specific user in GP, I can change it to be selected users and say, okay, SA can only see those 4 states. Everyone else who would run this can see all of the states. You can apply restrictions to one user, multiple users. There's actually user classes if you still have those set up. You can apply it that way. The nice thing about that is, say you're doing it based on salespeople or something like that, you could actually have state restrictions. I could have 10 different state restrictions in here, each one applying to a different GP user. So those are kind of nice. I'm going to say it's to all users right now, and we'll get rid of that one just to make sure I have data. So if I save this, again, launch SmartList and say yes to the message. And if you have SmartList already open, you do have to close it so that you get this message again. Now if I go to the receivables one, I think I had added state. Okay. So if I add the state column, you can see I'm only getting those 4 states. Nothing outside of that. But the nice thing is I can still do 4 more search criteria in here. So I can say where customer name begins with A. So I can still do multiple restrictions. The one thing to keep in mind with all of the restrictions in SmartList Builder is An end user cannot change those restrictions. They don't see them. You can tell down here, it doesn't even tell me that there's a state restriction on this, but there is a customer name restriction. So they don't even know it's there, so you want to make sure you're naming it properly so they understand the data they should be getting. But they are restrictions that apply to everyone who runs that report unless you use the user assignment option in the restriction. Okay. Another great feature is calculations. I hear a lot of things of, can I do a calculated field? Can I do this? You can't do any sort of calculations in SmartList, but SmartList Builder allows us to do calculations that create a new column. There's no totaling calculation like you might want to do in Excel. That isn't there in SmartList Builder, but we can do a new column calculation. And there are a lot of different calculation options available, so let me just pull up a different report. We'll look at the payables transaction this time. I'll go to the calculations button, and I actually have a couple set up, but let's look at just new and then some of the functions. So there's the basic add, subtract, multiply, divide, and a percentage, but there's also stuff to do for your date, as well as different mathematical equations, square roots, rounding, powers, all of that. And then there's a couple system functions, one being a case, which is our if-then format, and a cast statement, which would cast a data type, say a string, to an integer. Maybe you're using a user-defined field, which would always be a string, but you're storing a number in there. You want to calculate off of it. You can cast it to an integer so that you can do a calculation. And then we do have the string function so that you can trim characters off. You can put spaces in. You can stuff things in there however you want to do it. Now, a lot of these, if you're like me, you look at it and go, I don't know what that means. There is a great how-to article on customer source. And in the slide deck, I'll show you that. I did put the name and the URL to that. So that is in the slide deck for you. But there is a list of functions that you can use for SmartList Builder, Excel Report Builder, Navigation List Builder, and if you're using Extender or looking into that, they have the same calculations as well. But it goes through each one and gives you kind of an example of some different syntaxes that you might use for that as well. So it can be a great starting guide. If you need more, these are all just SQL functions. You can search books online. You can search the web. You'll find different functions or syntaxes for those functions as well. Okay, so let's look at, I have a couple set up here. So what I did is created one. I said, I want to know what the difference is between today's date and the due date on my transactions. How many days out are we? Are we past? What is the calculation? So what I can do is a date diff, which is just one of the different date functions available. And when I go down a little bit here, when I double click on one, it actually gives me the basic syntax and tells me I need to insert some stuff. So when I look at this, anything in capital letters is the syntax that needs to be there. Anything in all lowercase is what I have to replace. So it says date part, and I said, well, I want to know how many days. So even if it's next month, I don't want to know it's 1 month and 3 days. I want to know it's 35 days, whatever it might be. So you do day for the day part. And then I said, okay, the starting date, I want today's date, so I just use the getDate function, put that in there, and then the end date, I want to use the document date. Actually, no, this isn't quite right. I want the due date. So all I have to do is highlight that. Find my due date, and I double-click, and it actually replaces whatever was highlighted. So that was a quick thing. Now let me get rid of this. There is a validate button to make sure that you haven't typed something wrong. Maybe you only put 1 D and it needs 2 in the date part, something like that. So it validates. It's not making sure your syntax makes any sense. It's just making sure the syntax is actually correct so that I didn't spell something wrong. So that's one, and we'll look at that in a minute. on the report. The other one I did is a string one, and I said, I just want one address field. I don't want to see the address 1, the address 2, the address 3, city, state, zip, all in separate. I want them in one field. So I can just add them all together. But when I did this, I said, well, what if I don't have address 2? What if I don't have an address 3? Not everybody has one. So I'm just trimming a right trim off any blank spaces off of it. So if they're blank, I'm trimming the whole thing out. But trimming any blank spaces, adding one space to the end, and that's what my single quotes, if you're familiar with SQL, single quotes are the syntax you use to put around text, and then I have a space in there, and just keep adding the parts together. Now I did put a comma in here after the city, just to have a little bit of formatting, but I can add all these together. And if I save this, I'll show you what both of these do now. This usually goes a little bit faster than that. I think the streaming is slowing it down a little bit, but oops, those are under additional payables transactions. So now you can see the days to due date. Keep in mind this is CyberCam data so that it is 2017 years, so these numbers might look kind of incredible, but it's calculating based off of today's date out to 2017. So it is calculating that. Looks like I had some past due when it was not quite calculating 2014. Oh, that's the document date. I'm not sure what the due date in the system is. It might be blank. But it is calculating that. And then my address field is adding all of those into one field. You can see it leaves a space. It looks like there's 3 spaces here because I had a space after address 2 and a space after address 3, which there isn't one, so it's just a blank. And my comma is in there. You can do the formatting however you like with that. But that's a couple options for calculations, just to give you an idea that it's not just adding and subtracting of numbers. It can be a lot more than that. Another great thing about SmartList Builder is the summary options. So we'll just look at our sales transactions again. Now, when I look at this in SmartList, it gives me every sales transaction that I've put into the system. I might want just kind of a summary of totals for a customer. Just give me one line per customer with their sales transaction summary. So I can go to the summary button and say, let's do a summary SmartList. And now it gives me all the fields and says, okay, what do you want to summarize by? Well, I'm going to go to the customer number. Try to use as unique a field as I can. I might have 2 customers with the same name and different numbers, so I don't want to use name. I'll use number. I double-click on it, and then I can pick one of the options of group by, count, maximum, minimum. So I'm going to group by that. And I will save this, show you what it does by default, and then we can look at other options in there. So by default, I am getting 1 record for each customer. You can see I went from several hundred to 70. Now, most of the stuff is returning 1. If I order it, there is some other numbers in here. And then the document amount is returning an actual sum. What's happening is I didn't tell it what to do with any of the other fields that are on there. So let's go over. Some of these fields might not make sense to have on there. Document status, this is pulling from work open in history documents, so status might not be appropriate anymore when I'm grouping, so I might remove that field. I'm going to order this by default. Let's get rid of the coming from somewhere else. Okay. Stop type, probably not appropriate again because it could be an invoice, could be an order. Stop number, document date. Some of these aren't appropriate, so I'm going to remove them. But then let's say customer name. Well, Aaron Fitz is Aaron Fitz. I want to know his name. But in here, it's showing me 92. So if I come to summary, come down to customer name, it's set to count. So there was 92 records that got summed up into this one record for Aaron Fitz. Well, I can change that to be maximum or minimum. His name is always the same, so it doesn't matter if I pick maximum or minimum. But once I save that, relaunch SmartList, and again, this is a lot slower than it usually is. You can see it got rid of a couple of those fields, but now customer name is showing, and I didn't do anything to these, so it is doing a count still. It depends on if it sums it, counts it, what it does based on the data type of the field. So strings, it always counts. If it's a dollar amount, it tries to sum it first, if it can. So you would just need to change those when you do a summary, but that is an option to have summary reports. I could duplicate this report and have a summary one and a detail one, however you want to do that. The other option you may have noticed when I was in the summary button is this multi-company over here. SmartList Builder actually has the option to pull data from multiple companies into one report. I don't have any data in my test company. Well, I might. But you can pull in data from multiple companies just by checking the company there. Now, if I were to run this, I wouldn't know which company the data came from at this point. So what you can actually do is add a calculated field. There's a couple special fields where I can pull in company ID or company name. So I'll just pull in company name. That's all I have to do for that one. And then I have to turn it on. And you'll see that it changes a little bit. There might be data in my other company. Okay. Sales transactions. Oh, and I didn't set that to not, or to show the maximum. But I think what I did in my test company is restore the Fabricam data into it. So I have two records now that are exactly the same for everyone because I restored the company in there. But you can see I am getting two records for Aaron Fitz. And if I can prove that to you. Okay, not going to let me edit those calculated fields. I guess I got to write that up. But it should let me change those to be maximum and minimum as well. I'll get that fixed. So you can do summary, you can do multi-company. Another great thing about it is I can actually, if I open my sales transaction one, now I said I could have a summary, I could have a detail, so this is my summary one. I can go to Options, Duplicate, give it a new ID, okay, so now I have a detail one. I'm just going to put detail here too. So right now they're exactly the same report, but if I come into the summary button, uncheck that, click save this, and I'm actually going to turn off the multi-company so that we don't get data from both companies at the moment. You can tell brand new ones do take longer, as it isn't just checking to see if everything's there, it's actually putting it all there. Okay, so now I have my detail one, which looks just like the original one did, and you can see I still have my company column checked in there. Looks just like the original, other than it's not summarized up. So now the nice thing is I can actually create what we call a go-to from my summary to my detail. So say I look at Aaron Fitz in my summary and I want to know more detail of what's made up in those 92 transactions, I can drill down to those in the detail. So if I go to go-tos, and there's actually a bunch here, but I'm going to create a new one. And it's an open SmartList one. I can just call that detail or whatever. Now it wants to know, where does the SmartList come from? Well, it's a SmartList Builder report, so I'll pick that. And which one is it? It's the sales transaction detail. Now I have to tell it, okay, what column in your summary would you want to drill back on to your detail? I'm going to do it on the customer number. The field here, customer number, and it's a SmartList field, not just a data field. So, what am I doing? Customer number. And there was actually two customer numbers, three actually in here, because multiple tables have it. So it really doesn't matter. Your customer number should be the same in all of them, but if you are linking something that might not be the same, it's going to be a little bit of trial and error, or change the name of the field in SmartList Builder so that we know which one it's pulling up here. Either option works. Save this. I say OK. SmartList again. Now if I go my sales transactions, so we know Astor Suites has 42 records because this company ID is still doing accounts. So if I double click on that, it'll actually do one of the other go-tos, an open sales transaction entry. But if I come here, go to my detail one I set up, it actually flips over to sales transaction detail and opens the customer master suites, and I did get the 42 records I would expect. So pretty quickly I created 2 smart lists, drilled between them, not too hard of a setup there. As you saw, there was our go-to setup there, the one opened a GP window. So some of the templates have those built in, some don't, but they're similar to, if I were to come to the default sales transactions, once that's done, the go-tos that you have here, some of them are set up similar to those for you already. So that is the basics of the different options in SmartList Builder. There is one more. It is available for default SmartList as well, but it's the columns. If you want to reorder your columns, you can do that in SmartList Builder. This is a GP 2010 R2 feature, so before that you had to do it in the SmartList window, but in SmartList Builder now you can do that. That option for just standard SmartList is under the tool setup system or the administration navigation pane, but there's a SmartList options window where you can actually reorder the columns. Say this is account one, I can switch to sales transactions and say I want customer number moved before document date. You can reorder the columns here. It doesn't do it for all your favorites, it just does it for the default, but you can change that. You can also change the maximum records in here that it uses. So that is there. Security for SmartList Builder. You may have been watching it and going, wow, she could have added payroll, she could have added anything. I don't want my end users doing that. SmartList Builder is only available to the power user group or role by default. You can create a new role, give access to the different SmartList Builder windows. You can limit it, however you want to go about that. But by default, it is only to power user. And then once I create the SmartList and I say yes to add it to the SmartList window, nobody's going to see it but the power user in SmartList until you give them access to that particular SmartList. So I could say, yes, you can create a SmartList Builder setup for payroll, but based on my security, you can't actually view it in SmartList. So it's kind of hard to set it up and know if it's working if you can't view it, but you could get that linear where you can't view it. So you can limit the access to modules like payroll if you're using those. The other things you can do with SmartList, as I mentioned before, you can add SQL tables. There is security to all of that. So I can come into the SQL table security, say for my 2 database. I can say I want access to this table. I say OK. Now when I come into SmartList Builder, there's actually an additional option for SQL Server tables. Oh, I got to enter a name and stuff here. Okay, I already have one, but we'll use it anyways. And you can see that one table is available. There is no other tables or views available because I've only given access to that one. So you can grant SQL tables, and you can see when we were in that window, it actually shows every database that's on your SQL Server. I actually have 3 installed the GP on this SQL Server. So here's my 3 Dynamics databases, or system databases. That's why I have a couple of different 2s. So I can see everything. If I had a CRM database, that would show up in here. So anything that's on this SQL Server, I can pull data from it, just using the SQL Server option. So let's take a quick look at the other products that come with SmartList Builder, as it's listed on the price sheet. If I come into SmartList Builder, let's start that. I have one set up called User Security. I wanted a SmartList that shows me all my user security. This isn't one of the templates to download, but if you want this, just send me an email, I can give it to you. There's a couple user security reports, but I don't want it in SmartList. I want it in Excel because I'm not a GP user by nature. I'm an admin. I just want to know what everybody has access to. I'm going to duplicate this over. And instead of doing SmartList as I did before with the sales transactions, I'm going to pick Excel report. And it gives it the same name by default. I'm going to leave it. Then I know it's the same report. Duplicate that over. And now I have it in Excel Report Builder. So I don't have to redo the setup. I can just duplicate it. So now Excel Report Builder does create a SQL view, so I have to give a view name. I usually recommend you put ERB for Excel Report Builder or something like that in front of it so that when you're looking in SQL, you know where it came from, but you don't have to. I'm just going to publish this. And just so we see it quick, I'm just going to go to the desktop. So here I have, it creates an actual data connection file and then my actual Excel file. So I'm going to open my Excel file. Generally, you'd probably have those going to two different folders so the end user only saw the Excel report. Name of my content. But here is the report. And I'm not even sure I paid attention to what this one was actually doing. But it is an Excel report. I'm not even sure that one is pulling the right data. I'll have to look at that, but it does pull into Excel. Now, if I make a change to the transactions, so say wrong GP, I come in here, set up a new user, then I give them access to Fabricam, and then I give them user security. Oh, can't type my own name. So I'll just put myself in the AP clerk, and I got to do default. I come back to Excel. Now, I haven't relaunched it. I still have it open from before. I'm just going to go to Data, Refresh All. And you can see just like that, it's putting all of my Nicole records in here. Now, I'm not sure why this report isn't quite working, but it is an Excel refreshable report. I just have to get my report fixed up a little bit. So I can use Excel Report Builder to create Excel refreshable reports. So if you're using SmartList Builder, you've been using it for a while, and you decide, hey, I want those Excel reports now, we're ready to go that route, I can duplicate my SmartList Builder reports over, or I can import the templates from the customer source, duplicate them over into Excel Report Builder, and automatically have my Excel report as well. So I have a quick, nice little thing. The nice thing about Excel reports is they're outside of GP, so they're using your Windows authentication. Some setup has to be done within SQL to get you the access to the data, but that is using Windows authentication, and it uses the light users licensing within the GP licensing model. So that is Excel reports. Now, if I go back to SmartList Builder, we'll pull a different report. I don't know if that works. We'll do the receivables transactions. We'll go to Options, Duplicate. We'll go to Navigation List, and we'll do a receivables transaction. Duplicate that over. I'm going to change this to be on the sales navigation pane because financials doesn't make sense for a receivables report. And let's just put, I think there's already one called receivables transaction, so we'll put demo on that. Save it. I come to sales now. Didn't come on there, so I actually have to relaunch GP quick. I'll do that, and we'll talk about a couple other things. While that's launching, one of the nice things about SmartList Builder is that most people who are using it are very willing to share their ideas, share their setups, because they need help along the way as well. So once they figure it out, they're willing to help you, knowing that, in the future you might help them. So going out to the communities on customer source, the forums, the blogs, different things like those, you can actually post your questions or find other things that have been posted that might answer your question on how to do something. Say I'm trying to figure this calculation out and I just can't figure it out, or I'm trying to figure out where this data is coming from and I can't figure it out. Go post it. Most likely somebody's going to help you. They may already have a report complete that's doing exactly what you want, and they'll just give you the export for it, you import it. But people are very willing to help with this kind of stuff because it's kind of one of those, take it as you learn it, and everybody needs some assistance at different times. So now I have my receivables transaction demo. The navigation list, sometimes they'll show up, I'd say about 75% of the time you have to relaunch to get it to show on the menu. But it is on the menu now, on the navigation pane. And the first time you run it, it takes a little bit as it builds the layout of it. And it won't look real pretty as I duplicated it from SmartList Builder, but it'll show up here, and then we'll have to do some modifications to it. Okay, so you can see it's the same data we would see in SmartList. I might want to take some of these columns off here so that I don't have such a big scroll bar. I could do, it's more like a navigation pane, so I might want certain columns here and then some of the other columns actually to show up down here when I click on whatever record. So maybe I'd have the customer number here, have their address information down here, something like that. I can do any of that in Navigation List Builder, as it has options for display, which is this section, and preview, which is this section. And there's actually 3 columns available. If I look at the preview button, I can change columns. So there's 3 columns available there. You can change the layout a little bit as you want. The duplication from SmartList Builder just kind of marks which ones did you have as display and default before. So you may have to modify them a little bit, but the go-tos that came from SmartList Builder are actually up here. So if I click this credit memo, I can click view, and it actually, that record doesn't work. It might be a history record trying to pull it up in the entry, but let's go to this one. Then I can pull up the customer yearly summary inquiry, so it is a history record for that transaction. So all the go-tos that I did all the work for in SmartList Builder are already here in Navigation List Builder now that I brought it over. So really it comes down to a point of where do you want to see the data? Do you want to see it in SmartList? Do you want to see it in Excel? Do you want to see it as a navigation list? How do you want to work with it? But that is basically SmartList Builder in a bundle. So I will hand the floor back over to Adam, and we can then open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you. One moment, please. And ladies and gentlemen, you should all be seeing a survey now in your slide area. If you enjoyed today's webcast or you have any feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, please let us know by completing the survey. To complete that survey, just click the links provided on the screen. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand the floor back over to Nicole to wrap up with questions or closing remarks. Nicole, feel free to pull up your Q&A menu in live meeting. You'll view those questions.
Okay. So the first question here is, can other users be logged into GP when you're updating SmartList tables with new SmartList or changes to SmartList using Builder? The answer is yes. Anybody can be logged in to GP, that's not a problem. They won't see anything you're doing until you actually say yes to update that SmartList. So say they're using the sales transaction one and I'm making changes to it in SmartList Builder. Until I say yes and they rerun SmartList, so they have to close SmartList, relaunch it to get that new information there, whatever I've changed, they wouldn't know I did anything until that point. So I can update it while they're using it. It's just not going to show them those changes until they refresh. So it isn't a problem of other people being in there at all. Okay. Is it possible to have the ability for one SmartList that has both sales order transactions and purchase receipts on it to have just one go-to that you can launch the applicable inquiry window that will show the document details? So basically, if it's a sales order, open a sales transaction window. If it's purchase receipt, open the inquiry, open the purchase inquiry. That isn't possible. It doesn't have that logic there. I know when you think about it, say in sales transactions in the default SmartList, it knows if it's work open or history. There's a lot of coding going on behind the scenes for it to do that. SmartList Builder doesn't have the ability to add in that coding, so you would have to have the inquiry window, the transaction entry window for both sales and purchases, and then the end user would have to know which one to launch. You saw me try and open a transaction entry window for a history transaction, and it just doesn't work, and there's no way around that at the current moment. But I will enter that as a suggestion to see if we can get some sort of logic so that it knows that, but currently there isn't, no. Okay, how do you download the sample again? I'm assuming you're talking about the templates that I've been using kind of as the demos. So if you go to Customer Source, and I apologize, mine's a Partner Source kind of view, but on Customer Source, I believe it's under Downloads and Updates, and then Reports Library, or if you just type in SmartList Templates, I believe it comes up as one of the first options as well. And I have to log in again. Try that again. So well, this is the link once my page comes back. I'm not sure why the link says 8.0 because the page says 10.0, but it is the right link. So if you just search for SmartList Templates, it should be the first one that comes up. And now this does say 10. They work in 2010. They work in 2013. It's just we haven't updated the page to take off the 10 for you. We may republish some of them if they can take ability of a new feature that might be in 2010 or 2013. Republish them for those versions as well here if we need to, but they are all available and they all work in all the different versions. So those are SmartList templates. There is in the PowerPoint slides a link to that page as well. Okay. That looks to be all the questions, unless anybody else has one they want to pose. Okay. Well, let me put my email. I don't know, can they see my screen, Adam?
No, they can't. What we can do is you can reply to a question. I'll go ahead and ask a question. I'll ask, what is your email? You can reply all, and they'll all have your email.
Okay.
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 All right. And with that, are you ready to close out the session?
Yeah, I am ready. So I want to thank everybody for their time today. And if you have any questions about SmartList Builder, just send me an email. I'll post that out there. I'm happy to answer those for you.
Okay. And with that, I'd like to extend a special thanks today to Nicole, and thank you all for joining us. You may now disconnect from the event.